Anything you do or don't want to talk about?
I can't imagine what I'm a very square guy. There's nothing that
Very, very.
the only thing that you could ask me and I could say. I mean, if you ask me anything about Donald Trump legal cases, then because I actually have represented him and I represent him now, I couldn't really comment. But except in it,
What?
but I can talk.
This needs to be deleted, obviously, but
No, it's nothing
you're
has to be.
representing Trump now?
Yeah. It,
What?
in a copyright case in Georgia,
What happened there?
he was sued for using a song without a license at his rallies, and the
Okay.
guy lives in Georgia, so he sued him in Georgia. It's a holdup. I mean, he does the guy. We don't believe the guy even owns it. He's the son of the guy who wrote it. He doesn't seem to have a clear title. The judge said he gets to make his case.
When someone sues for that, like, what's the process? He reaches out to Trump. Hey, you used my song without permission.
Write me a gigantic check.
Give me a check.
Write me a gigantic check.
Gigantic, because it's Trump. If it was Tully
And-
Krause, they would ask for a lot less money,
That's right. That's right.
but still a lot of money. As
Still
as they can.
much more money than it would possibly be worth.
And if he did ask for permission and did need to pay, what would be the difference? Let's say he's asking for $10 million. But if he asked permission in the beginning, like, I want to use your song for the rally, he would pay 20 grand?
We'll never know because his position is he would the Bob Dover here.
Okay.
I would never have given it to him because he's Donald Trump and he's so bad for African
Well, that's what
Americans.
he's saying now, no? Because he's in a lawsuit. So
So now he says, I wouldn't have given it, but now that you took it without my permission, not only do I get the value of it, but I get the value of it, the price that I would put on something that I wouldn't even willingly sell. In other words, it would be even higher. Anyway, he's not going to be able to prove his case.
in such a scenario, me coming from my little Brooklyn bubble and then like migrating to like Muncie,
Right.
the rest of the world, how does that work? Trump doesn't reach out to you. He has a team. Like, what is that
So I was partners.
infrastructure?
Okay, so I was partners with Harmeet Dillon, who is now the Assistant United States Attorney for Civil Rights.
Okay.
She has represented Donald Trump and the Trump campaign for many years. So during the 2020 election, I was involved in some of the cases, some of the litigation, challenging Biden's election. Even though my background is not in political law or election law, but I'm a litigator, I'm an experienced litigator, and they needed someone who could throw his weight around in Philadelphia, so I was head of Philadelphia. Practically speaking, when this lawsuit was filed, the campaign asked the firm to handle it because they knew that they had someone who had copyright infringement experience, and that was me. And Harmeet subsequently left the firm, but the campaign is still letting us continue, letting me continue with the work, even though I left the firm also. It's very
So
simple.
you took it on.
I took it on, right?
Trump pays for this out of his own pocket. It's like it's campaign money.
It's campaign money because he really this is all a campaign expense. This whole lawsuit, even though he's named personally, which is very common in intellectual property infringement cases, because when someone commits a tort,
A what? A tort?
a hezek, someone causes somebody else damage. There's two broad categories of law cases, right? Criminal and civil. Then within civil, there's contracts. Two people voluntarily get into a relationship, and then one says, yes, you did, no, you didn't. And then there are torts, which is where somebody damages somebody else through his conduct. Trademark, copyright, patent infringement are kinds of torts. So in a tort, even if you have a company, even if you set up a company for purposes of limiting your liability, the law is still that a tort can ultimately only be committed by a person. So even if it's the company doing it, a person pushed the button that made the company do it. But as a practical matter, this is really a campaign expense. The whole reason that the song was used was first of all, they had a license. They claim the license is not valid for technical reasons. And again,
When they say they had a license, what does that mean?
so there are clearinghouses that you go to if you want to license music for an event. There are certain clearinghouses that you go to instead of trying to track down the artist himself, and they give you a price for different kinds of licenses: public performance licenses or, different.
Is it like title insurance on a house? Like it says you are clear to buy this house or clear to use this song.
You're licensed to use the song. Title insurance on the house, no. Title insurance is not really a license. Title insurance is just
Nobody has a lien on this property.
Right. It's a different kind of thing.
What do clearinghouses charge to be able to use a song at a presidential Trump rally?
Well, that could easily, I think your guess was probably a pretty good one, depending on the candidate, depending on the location, how many people are going to be there, and the value of the song. Okay, so some songs are super duper gigantic all-time hits, and it's going to be harder to license them or more expensive to license them than, for example, Hold On, I'm Coming, which is what the song in question was a hit even before I was born. That's how old of a song it is. So if you're of a certain age, it's familiar to you. If you're into rhythm and blues, it's familiar to, or Motown, it's into you. But if you're under 60 and you're just a regular person, the only reason you'll probably know it is because Trump made it famous at his rallies.
Was there a value now to the artist or artist's family or brand because they used it at a rally? As in like, oh, now there's more streams on Spotify. And now more views on YouTube.
So that's a question that I can't answer because I don't know, I don't know the facts. I don't know whether that's you. In order to address that issue in a lawsuit, you'd have to get expert testimony.
Okay.
That would be here. There are general principles in these matters. This is an unusually customized fact situation because it's one. He's the president of the United States. Not only he's running for president of the United States, he's a former president of the United States. He's Donald Trump. So, and plus he had the woman who is now the widow, but who was at the time this all happened, the wife of Donald Trump. Not the wife of that. The wife of the artist who passed away. Mm-hmm. Her understanding was that the license was good, and she's a Trump supporter, and so.
The son is making issues?
The son is making issues. It's a shakedown. There's a gigantic.
Is it worth it for him to spend so much money on lawyers when he's up to against even more money?
It would. It wasn't. It's a word for the plaintiff. You mean?
Yeah.
Well, he's
going up against Trump's team,
right? But he's in for a penny, in for a pound. He's thinking that he's got a big payoff here.
How much did he make off the clearinghouse? The clearinghouse pays the artist or artist brand?
It doesn't. We don't know that. It doesn't, and it doesn't really matter. Again,
did he make money off direct money off the song from his father being used at the rally?
I don't know.
Interesting. Wow. Okay.
Want to introduce me?
Welcome back to another episode of the What It Takes podcast. My name is Tully Krause, CEO at Blackbird Recruiting. Today's guest, Ron Coleman. Ron has been a litigation, intellectual property, and what was the other one you said? Infringement, copyright.
Well, that's intellectual property.
It's intellectual property.
Free speech. How about
Free
that
speech.
one? That would be a good one.
Free speech attorney for over 30 years.
Yeah.
You have worked with on cases that involved presidents. You have over 250,000 followers on X. You have the biggest blog on intellectual property law in the country.
One time it was. Now it's retired.
Okay. Now it's retired?
It's retired.
Are you retired?
Many people thought it was retarded also.
I said retired. I didn't say retired. I said retired. Welcome to the podcast.
You. My pleasure.
How did you get into intellectual property law and why?
It's a good question. I used to work for my mother. My mother used to work for a patent lawyer at the Cities Service Company. It's an oil company.
Cities Service
in Cranberry, New Jersey. They had a technology center, and she was the secretary for a patent lawyer. And I used to go and I would help her out sometimes. I would do some typing because he would dictate patent applications. and my mother had trouble keeping up. She'd take the work home, and
Okay.
because English wasn't her first language.
Where's she from?
Cuba. She's from Cuba.
Really? Okay.
But not because her English was excellent. But the point is, she was happy to give me the work, and she gave me, I made a few bucks. But when I would go to her office, I encountered the trademark Gazette, which is when a trademark is registered.
Okay.
It's printed in the Gazette, so that there's a public record of the registration, and also so there's 30 days in case anyone wants to oppose the registration. And when I encountered these, I said, "Oh, I love this. This is cool. This is where all the brands live."
What did it look like?
It looked like a
classifieds in the
no.
newspaper?
Imagine a paper bound book, like a
Loosely
law
binded?
journal,
Okay.
like a library book, but paper bound
Okay.
and it just word picture
Of the
of the trademarks and the owners of the trademark, information about the class of the trade. I didn't understand what it was in those days, but that intrigued me very much. When I wasn't motivated to go into law because of my interest in trademarks. I was interested in politics. I always had a very verbal orientation. So I thought I would probably enjoy being a lawyer. I would probably like being an advocate.
were you always studious?
Yeah. In a way. I mean, there's studious like my wife, who I was bookish. In other words, I was nerdy. Instead of going out and playing, I would read books. I was interested in the world around me. But in terms of studious, I mean, in my house, if you had homework, you did the homework. But people who were really, really successful academically, like Mrs. Coleman,
Rebbitzin
Coleman, Esquire, she would go to the library to study. Whereas, like when I was in college, if I didn't have an assignment due, then I would go to the radio station to be a DJ, or I would, I was having fun. And then when the test came, I would cram, and that doesn't really work out so great at the college level unless you're really a super genius,
right?
Which I'm not. I'm just a regular genius. So, so studious, but I guess compared to the average person, I mean, I had a very high GPA in high school, so I got into a very good college and a very good law school. So that worked out okay for me.
You ever take an IQ test? Just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
And were you happy with the results, or shocked, or like, oh, cool, moving on?
They seem to be pretty respectable.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've probably had smart. Listen, there are a lot of people who aren't into the world of credentials, who are super duper smart, and they apply themselves at business, at real estate, at recruiting, and they don't have the diplomas on the wall like I do,
right.
Or maybe not the vocabulary because they're not, but they've got spreadsheets in their brains, right? And they know how to. So measuring intelligence is of definite value, but not absolute value.
Not be all in all.
Right.
You started your career in law. What was that like? Did you go work in-house? You started right out on your own? Did you go work at a firm?
Yeah. So what's very common, if you go to the major law schools, they have the major law firms recruit at those schools. So I was at Northwestern in Chicago, and I wanted to return to New York. I'm originally from the New York area, so I wanted to return to New York to work. So most of the major law firms on the East Coast recruited at Northwestern. So I interviewed with various firms. And for my second summer, my first summer, I was in a New Jersey law firm where I confirmed that I wanted to be a litigator, right? There are all kinds of different lawyers. And my second summer, I went to a firm that was very strong in litigation and antitrust. And they offered me a full-time job after graduation.
How long were you there for?
Well, it's a little bit of a complicated question because they offered me the job after graduation, which would have been after I took the bar exam in 1988. But I turned it down because I wanted to go to yeshiva in Israel. because I had become religious after college. And although I had very nice academic credentials, I had never formally studied in yeshiva, and I felt that given my intellectual abilities, I should not be illiterate. So I said to the law firm, why don't you, I appreciate the offer, but this is, and I had student loans and, coming from a working class family, it was, a very big number for me in those days. This is, again, the 80s. And it was a Park Avenue firm. It was very prestigious, but I said I can't do it because I'm not married. This is the time in my life when I'm going to have the opportunity to do this, and I'll have to take my. They said, no, not so fast. You have to turn down the offer. We hire a lot of people. We hire 30, 40 people every year. So instead of coming in the fall of 88, you'll come in the fall of 89. Okay, we do that when some people have judicial clerkships. We can do it for you. It doesn't really make a big difference to us. We like you. You like us. It'll be fine. So I took them up on that offer, which was amazing, incredibly generous on their part. And I went to Israel and I studied for a year. And then I ended up studying for a second year, which I had not planned on, but which worked out for me. And they gave me another year's deferral.
Is that something they commonly do? Give it a second year deferral?
It's not unheard of, but they were getting a little bit worried that maybe I was never going to come back. And I would never have had the audacity to ask for it myself. But I had a teacher in the yeshiva. I had come back from Israel to Monsey, right here in Monsey, New York. And he sat down with me. He said, Ron, you've made a lot of progress in a year, but a guy like you should be a little bit further up the curve in terms of skills. I said, okay, that's probably true, but due to the circumstances of my birth and upbringing, this is what I got,
You got to go to work.
I got to go to work. He said, well, we have a program here where you can go to an advanced yeshiva in Brooklyn, and this was when Brooklyn was the center of the yeshiva world, not like it is today. Today, Lakewood, New Jersey is the center of the yeshiva world. We could probably get you up to speed to go to that yeshiva, and then you would really be, you'd be in the mainstream. And I did take a lot of pride in passing well for someone who wasn't raised religious, because I grew up in a quasi-Yiddish speaking family. I had a lot of familiarity with Yiddish. I'm from Brooklyn, which is basically like being Orthodox just by itself.
Forget about it.
So I came across, but I was still barely, quasi-literate. He said, Reb Leib, I appreciate it, but again, I have this situation, I have this job, my parents I can't walk away from this.
Who's paying off your debt for that year?
So during that time, you have they defer repayment of the loan.
Till you start working?
Till you start working.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah. So he said, I want you to meet someone. Let's go on a trip up to a place called Camp Morris, which is a bungalow colony in the Catskills. This was the summer. And talk to the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the Rabbinical Academy of Chaim Berlin in Brooklyn, which I had heard of. And I said, sure, I'll go along. I'll talk to, tell him your situation, because he's a very wise man. So we drove up to Camp Morris. I meet the Rosh Yeshiva of blessed memory. He is a very imposing person, beard down to his midsection. He was very sharp in those days still. And he hears my story and he says, you got a good point. I mean, this would be a very big deal for you. You recognize the value of learning Torah, and you know that your skills could be better. But on the other hand, you have this opportunity. You can, and what's the name of the law firm again? I said, again, told him the name of the law firm. He said, I'll be right back. We were sitting on his deck behind his house. He goes into the house and comes out 15 minutes later. It says, we'll see you in the yeshiva Hanukkah time. What just happened? What just happened? Turned out that a major supporter of that yeshiva was also a significant client of the same law firm. And that client of the law firm called up a member of the executive committee of the law firm and said, I would like you to please give Ron Coleman another year. He's under the wings of the Rosh Yeshiva here, and he said, look, just make sure that he's serious about coming back. That's all. I don't want to have egg on my face, which was good for me because this way I could tell my parents that, no, that I promised to come back. And I got another year, and I shortly thereafter got engaged, ended up learning in Chaim Berlin the following year, which was an incredible experience for me. And it was really, it did allow me to, look, my kids grew up really sort of thinking I was a normal Tati, a normal yeshiva dad, even though they all surpassed me very rapidly in their skills, which of course was the whole point.
Right. All right. Yossi says we got to do this with more energy. Are you spending between $20,000 and $30,000 a year on health insurance for you and your family? I use United Refuah HealthShare. For me and my family, we're spending $500 a month on our premium. And when we end up spending $1,500 a year on our deductible, after that, they cover 80% of every doctor's visit. It's usually meant for Baruch Hashem, healthy families that don't have any serious pre-existing medical conditions. And up to $4,000, they cover 80% of every bill. After that, they cover everything. It's very easy. You go to the doctor, you pay for the visit, take a receipt and the bill of what it shows what you paid for. You upload it to their portal, get a check in the mail. I've been using them. Every time I have a question, call them. You're talking to a Yid. Their office is in Cleveland. I spoke to somebody yesterday. I think her name was Rifki. Like, you're calling United Healthcare. You're probably on the phone waiting on hold for 20, 30 minutes. It's very complicated. Here you're talking to a Yid, one point of contact. I had a crazy story. Went to the hospital, got an $85,000 bill, ended up paying out of pocket like $600. United Refuah HealthShare showed me how to talk to the hospital, ask them the right questions, negotiate with the hospital. Very good stuff. Saves a lot of money. I absolutely recommend you reaching out to them and learning if it's the right fit for you. Was there something drawing you to become more religious, or was it more, let me get more well-rounded? I know, Jewish. Let me just learn more so I can be more well-rounded.
It's a very good question.
What did your parents think about it?
Well, the funny thing was, at the end of my senior year in college, my parents were nervous that I might marry a non-Jewish girl. Now, they never could really express to me, but they didn't, nor did they have to, why that was so important to them. Because they weren't living a Jewish life either.
At all?
They consider themselves Jewish. They call themselves Jewish. But we didn't keep kosher. We didn't keep Shabbos. We drove to shul on the holidays.
What did that look like?
Well, we were members of a conservative shul.
Okay. Temple.
No, it wasn't temple. Conservative
Shul?
doesn't. Most conservative synagogues don't call themselves temples.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a reform thing.
Okay. Just shows how much I know.
You shouldn't know from me.
Yeah.
I was always more interested in it. I always had more of an attachment to it. And again, we were raised in close proximity to my Eastern European grandparents.
Did they grow up religious?
They grew up as young children religious, but in the 1920s, everybody was leaving religion in Poland.
Right.
And they joined the Bund, the Jewish Labor Bund. And they became, quite irreligious. And yet my grandfather really wanted us to have a Jewish identity, and he's subscribing to the Jewish press. And he used to take me to shul, which was really bizarre. Like I remember at Simchas Torah, him taking me to shul. Why? I don't think he had a clear idea. He just didn't want us to assimilate and not become Jewish. It was really important to him. He wasn't such an ideologue, as many other members of the Bund were. He was just a young guy who just did what everybody else was doing, which is stop being religious, which is a shame. But he did help give me an emotional connection, that and being in a Yiddish family and being basically in a survivor family. So when I had a cousin who had become religious, my age. He had studied in Asia Torah and a number of other places. And he sent a message. This was back before cell phones, when it was difficult to communicate between America and Israel. But through his mother, to my mother, to me, there was some kind of program in Israel that I should look into. And the message was not well conveyed, and I wasn't able to get any information on it. But then there was an advertisement in the newspaper at Princeton, the student newspaper, seeking candidates for a program that sounded exactly what he was describing, which is exactly what it was. Okay. So I applied to that, and it was amazing. It was $450. Now, these are $1985, but $450 for 6 weeks in Israel, travel all over the country.
Like Birthright?
It was before Birthright,
okay.
Well before Birthright. This was this was really a pioneer, the Jerusalem Fellowships, it was called. My parents paid for it because they were so happy that I would be leaning in a Jewish direction, and they wouldn't have to worry so much about, my marrying out. I went on this, and it was really an outreach trip, but a very soft, very soft touch. They weren't leaning on me, but the more I learned about what I had not previously learned about, the more I came to understand that the way my family was being Jewish was kind of bogus. Even as conservative Jews are supposed to keep kosher.
Right.
Conservative Jews are only supposed to use the car to drive to shul on Shabbos, not to just do whatever they want. Like, none of the things we were doing were really in accordance with. So I started learning about what it really means to be an observant Jew. I left out a huge part of the story, which is that when I was in college, my roommate was a guy who had gone to the high school of Yeshiva University, MTA.
Okay.
And he was from West Orange, New Jersey, modern Orthodox guy. But for the first time in my life, and I grew up in Brooklyn, so I saw Orthodox Jews all the time, but I never talked to them. This guy is living with me at Princeton, and he's a phenomenal student. He's brilliant. And yet he's keeping Shabbos and keeping kosher. So I'm watching someone keep kosher and keep Shabbos in my room, and that really raised my consciousness about the Jewish way of life. It didn't make me feel the least bit guilty, because, again, until I went on this program, I thought, he's that kind of Jew and I'm this kind of Jew. It's okay, Once I came to understand that, no, what Matt was doing was really how a Jew should be. I never questioned the existence of God. I didn't need any of that. One of the things they did do at Asia Torah was, they have a lot of programs where they get you to understand that it's not irrational or some kind of crazy leap of faith to believe that the Torah comes from God, and that the Jewish people have a special mission. All the things that traditional Judaism teaches. I reached a point where that tipped. There was a tipping point, and I said, okay, I'm in.
When did that happen?
It happened like the last week of the program.
What was it?
No, it was just a cumulative effect. And I think it was something that in other words, I always wanted to do it authentically. And in fact, when I told Matt, this boy from MTA, he was 22, I was 22, that I had taken this on, he said, well, now you make sense, because you were always politically conservative and you had very really traditional values, but now at least you've got a theological and ethical grounding for it. So unhappily, is from the perspective of Asia Torah, I didn't stay there. You're supposed to stay there. I said, well, that's not happening. Okay, I got into this law school. You can't go if you don't know how to keep Shabbos. You're gonna screw it up. Guys, forget it. I'm going. Law school's waiting for me. I gave him a deposit. I'm not gonna kill my parents over. You're just gonna have to try. No one comes back. You're not gonna come back. to show you. I'm going to come back. I came back. Hashem worked that. It worked.
Yeah.
I asked my parents were, you also asked me, what did my parents think? Remember, they had sent me to this program at HealthShare. It was a little bit more than they were ready for. Now, when I came back, I was really Orthodox light because that's what I had seen. And I was in Israel. I wasn't really being exposed to what today would be called the Haredi world. But I didn't get a lot of static from them. It wasn't there were times where there were conflicts, but they were not gigantic. And years later, I said to my mother was telling me, bringing me up to speed on all the adventures of all my friends from high school, from speaking to their parents and whatnot. And, I'm already surrounded by her grandchildren. I said, so do you think we made the right decision? She said, yeah, I would. If you told me that you weren't doing this now, I would be disappointed, because she saw how beautiful Jewish life is, especially family life. Well, first of all, it gives you the ability to understand what fulfillment is, what the meaning of life is, what's the purpose of life. And this was something that I definitely needed, because, I wasn't an avaricious. I wasn't all that motivated by money. I thought I was. I thought I wanted to be rich, but I never really acted like someone who wanted to be rich. And I didn't have a business head. I was more like a social justice warrior in the literal sense of the words. And after all, my grandparents were socialists,
right?
I was I make a living now, but a lot of the work I do is either pro bono or issue oriented, either because of politics or because of free speech. And thankfully, I'm able to get paid for a lot of it. But I represent a lot of people who are, and also I do a lot of work for the Jewish community. And for many years, I was regularly representing Agudath Israel in court, or clients, major Jewish organizations and minor Jewish organizations that needed help. And either they would pay me, or if they couldn't pay me, then they wouldn't pay me. But I liked having the ability to use the secular education that I had to the benefit of the community that I felt that I had rejoined.
Would you say college is a scam? Not across the board, in some aspects.
Yes, absolutely. 80% of the people who go to college are not benefiting from college. They're learning things that should be taught at the high school level. Education in this country is a scam. Unions have destroyed it. Wokeness has destroyed it. The disintegration of the family has destroyed it. And the internet has not done it any favors either.
Gary Vaynerchuk is a big opponent of college. He says biggest scam.
Who is?
Gary Vaynerchuk. He's not a fan.
No. I think it has outlived its usefulness. But again, you can't talk about getting. First of all, the financial racket it's just a wealth transfer from the government to the university. That's how they got so rich. There was no risk in making these loans anymore. So the fees that they charge for these private schools and for state schools as well is mind-boggling. People become prisoners of this debt. It is a scam. I do think that for the right person in the right circumstances, there's a great deal to be said for liberal arts education. I think I grew immeasurably from it, but I don't even know if that's available anymore. I do think there are some. I have met some scholarly people who are self-directed and know what they want to study. But a lot then also depends on what your economic situation is.
Really? Go ahead.
Look, there's a place in the world for an accounting major. Okay, you can't major in accounting at Princeton. You can major in economics,
Right.
but they don't teach skills there. If you graduate from Princeton with what's called a concentration, not even called it, in architecture, they don't teach you drafting. This is not trade school. You want to learn drafting? Learn. Now, how are you going to do your senior project without drafting? You better work that out. But that's this kind of. It's the equivalent of what should be forgiven the comparison, but it's what in the yeshiva world we call lishma. In the idea of the liberal arts is that it's for its own sake, lishma, and it gives you a way of thinking about learning, and gives you the tools to, if you want to learn on a more advanced level or on a practical level, to go and do that. But that is historically been meant for an elite,
Right.
and everyone going to college, this idea that became such a big thing in the 90s, and everyone taking out huge debt to go to college, to learn things they should have already learned, like how to do expository writing, how to do basic mathematics. I mean, the garbage that's being taught in colleges now is just shameful.
We had someone on the podcast that said that colleges are so good at marketing. They were able to convince an entire generation that their kids now need to go to college. It's mind-boggling.
Is it the colleges doing the marketing though, or is it? I'm not.
Or like a peer pressure, like.
Yeah, I mean, it was a social movement. I think it was something that was very convenient for politicians to set. In other words, when my parents were growing up, what would a politician say? 2 chickens in every pot.
Okay.
Right? And then it was 2 cars in every garage. And in the 60s and 70s, it was 2 college degrees on the wall, right? One for mommy and one for daddy. That was the kind of attainment. And in the Jewish community, that was a way into the professions. And even though some schools were closed to Jews through the 40s and 50s, there were ways to overcome that. And credentials. So here you have a community among the Jews that knows what to do with scholarship and has an intellectual bent and a tradition of learning. But communities that don't have that, but were nonetheless taught the same trope of college is how you achieve, and then found that they couldn't necessarily achieve, they were given shortcuts.
Right.
It hasn't worked out well.
I want to go a little bit into your career. I mean, by now you've built a following, over 250,000 followers on X. You had the biggest blog in the country on intellectual property law. You've been involved in law cases that involve in legal cases that involve presidents. Running a business is hard enough. Why make payroll more complicated? With MegaPay, you get modern technology and a dedicated rep that knows your business inside out. No more generic 1-800 numbers, waiting on hold for a very long time, or customer service that has no clue who you are. And now they've just launched HR compliance consulting to help you stay ahead of the curve with all those tricky regulations. So whether it's payroll or HR compliance, MegaPay has your back every step of the way. Take the stress out of payroll and do what you do best, which is running your business. Make sure to check out MegaPayUSA.com/Blackbird recruiting and see how they can help you with your payroll. And we're back. So tell us a little bit about.
If we're going to mention things, I should mention that I appeared before the United States Supreme Court and won a case that is taught in law school to this day, involving free speech and trademark law, called the Mattel versus Tam. It's known as the Slants case.
Slants?
The Slants, because the name of I represented a rock band of Asian American young men who wanted to register the trademark The Slants for the name of their band. So Slants, going back really 100 years, was a slur for Asians because their eyes were slanted. Okay.
Oh wow.
I don't even understand how it's called slanted. I don't really think they're slanted, but okay, that was something that people used to say. and their registration application was denied because under the law, the trademark office was not allowed to register a disparaging trademark. And people might be familiar with the controversy that erupted around the same time, about 5 to 10 years ago, over the Washington Redskins trademark. That was supposed to be disparaging also.
Who comes up with this stuff?
Liberal,
People
largely
who don't have a
Jewish,
job?
law professors, social justice workers in the wrong sense of the, and it wasn't Native Americans as they call them today. It wasn't
The slants. Who is?
Oh, so this law, the law prohibiting the registration of disparaging marks actually goes back to the 1940s. It had nothing to do with civil rights or hate speech. It was it was a provision that was added as part of an international trademark treaty.
But they have a list of all the things that can be disparaging remarks?
No, they don't know
so
that.
Who decides?
Who decides?
They call Ron Coleman and say, help us figure this out.
You have stumbled on one of the problems with the law, which is who decides. And the Supreme Court, ultimately, when it decided in our client's favor, said the only answer to who decides seems to be the United States Patent and Trademark Office decides. That's not going to do it because the government doesn't have the right to discriminate with respect to a service that's provided to everyone to discriminate based on the content of the message. That is a First Amendment infringement, and they struck down that statute, and our client was able to get its registration.
How much did it cost them in fees?
It would have cost them about $600,000 in fees, but we did it pro bono. I worked pro bono, and I got it. I have a plexiglass award from the ABA for my pro bono achievements. And the funny thing was, the way I got the case,
the $600,000 plaque.
Well, here's the thing: the guys, they didn't have money. They weren't a successful band. They were successful in the Supreme Court, but not so much.
Did they become successful later on?
No, not really. And it's kind of funny. I think it was because of politics. Because they were pretty good. They were okay. I had written about trademark registrations that had been denied on my blog, trademark registrations that were being denied under this provision of the law, and also noticing that some were being granted or allowed, as they say.
So there was one person in the office saying yes, yes, no, no.
No, it was everyone in the office, and everyone was trained.
They remembered the term, the slants, like from
Yeah, someone did a search on it, I guess, and it came up. And he was just doing his job, the examiner. So after they were denied several times, their lawyer said, "I think you need somebody who's more of a litigator and less of a regulatory guy." And he said, "There's a guy who writes a blog about this stuff and who has opinions about this law. Maybe I'll give him a call and I'll tell him if it goes all the way, maybe you'll become famous." Now, I got to tell you, whenever people tell me, certainly now, take this case pro bono, it'll make you famous. Okay, that's when I reach for my revolver, okay? Because famous does not pay the mortgage. But this one time that I do it, it was well worth it because I did get to change the law a little bit. I had my little effect on history. I meet young people who are graduates of law school over the last 10 years, and they remember the case and they say, "Oh, that's your case," and that's kind of fun. And I got to be on TV a lot, and I got to go to the Supreme Court, which was a fantastic adventure. So,
when you say you went to the Supreme Court, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, we appealed to the administrative court within the Trademark and the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, it's called, within the USPTO,
saying that what this office is doing is
unconstitutional. And they said, well, we're following existing precedent, which says there's no First Amendment, there's no right to a trademark. And it's true that they were following precedent. So then I appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, and they said, the 3-judge panel said, no, we're bound by the same precedent they are. Nothing we can do about it. Except one of the judges wrote, in addition to the majority opinion, which she joined, she said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. But if the entire, no, we're not there yet.
All
If
right.
the entire court would meet and consider this case, that's called the court hearing the case en banc, E-N space B-A-N-C. In other words, all the members of a court of appeals can overturn a precedent
En banc means on the bench.
of their own press. So we argued it again in front of all 11 of them, and that was fun. You know, it used to be back in the days of circuses a trick. Clowns would get out of a car and they would keep getting out of the car and keep getting good. So here I remember standing there, and judges keep coming out and 11 judges. That was fun. That was a great challenge. And we won on the en banc appeal. They held that first of all, the trademark system had changed somewhat since the time of that precedent, but also that First Amendment law had changed somewhat. So then we won. The government then appealed to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court took up the case and agreed with the Federal Circuit opinion, and then we were famous for
But it didn't help pay the bills.
Well,
Did
no,
it bring
did.
more clients?
Absolutely, it did. And there's a very good reason for doing pro bono work, besides the fact that you like the work and you like the people and you like the cause. It established me as a bona fide free speech lawyer, because I had been doing First Amendment work. Some of it was free speech oriented because of my blogging work. A lot of bloggers came to me, or I would offer them help, sometimes in exchange for links to my blog on their blog, in order to promote my blog itself was an early form of social media, and it brought many clients to me. I was an established authority because of that blog, because, after all, this fellow who brought me the Slants case knew what I was doing in that area of law, because everyone in trademark law read that blog.
Right.
So it established me as an authoritative person, and it resulted in opportunities, and so did the Supreme Court turn. I was able to use that content to this day. I still use pictures of myself being interviewed outside the Supreme Court on some of my marketing materials, because who has that?
Right.
It's a cool thing. It was a great experience. It was very enjoyable, and I worked with great people with lots of experience in the Supreme Court area. And I say area, it's a specialty. Being a Supreme Court advocate is a specialty, and it's mostly people who have themselves been Supreme Court clerks, which I was not. But thank God we had a good result, and it was my little piece of history.
Wow. When it comes to changing law, someone once commented to me, if you want to make a change in a company in different sizes, here's how to perceive it. If someone is a one-person company, you're driving a small boat. You want to turn it around, you're done. If you're in a 20-person company, it's a decent-sized boat to turn around. It's a little slower, I'll look out for more things. If you're in a 10,000-person company, this is a cruise ship. You know how long it takes to turn around the cruise ship? So it's really, really impressive that you were able to change a law in the U.S. government.
Well,
in the trademark.
We struck down part of a federal statute that had been on the books since after World War II.
I feel like many people can't say that.
No, very, very few people can say that.
Very few people can. Many people can't. Let's talk about a little bit about marketing, because it's hard to find lawyers who are good at marketing.
That's true. Lawyers are mostly loath to distinguish themselves, especially in corporate. So my practice has always been, even though I'm a unique, I'll say it, I'm a unique person. My personal profile is more like the personal injury lawyer who does the TV commercial or the billboard. But my practice has never been that. My practice has always been on the corporate and business side. Those guys do develop their own personalities, but they're not widely respected. They're seen as ambulance chasers. It might not be fair. I mean, my friend Harry Rothenberg has become a very well-known figure, getting himself out there in all kinds of ways. I think he pulls it off very well.
What's interesting is I was in Philly, and in a lot of lower class neighborhoods, all the billboards are personal injury.
Yeah, well, that's right, and it wasn't an area of law that appealed to me, and it wasn't the kind of profile that appealed to me. So what? But on the corporate side, people do not want to distinguish themselves.
Right.
There are very, very few exceptions, and those who are exceptions sometimes end up getting their tail shot off it because they're just by virtue of being distinguished. But for me, it worked.
Have you ever had a instance where your tail was shot off?
No, every time that I was in in a large law firm, which was several times, my tail was shot off because I didn't fit. I didn't fit with the group.
The box. I
had this orientation towards causes and towards publicity that didn't, my messaging was not necessarily the firm's messaging. And I always said the firm had every right in the world to protect its messaging. These other people might not be as interesting and funny as you, Ron, but guess what? They have maintained the equity in this law firm for 50 or 100 years.
Right.
And they own a really valuable asset, and they can't afford to let you damage it because you're the charming and fascinating Ron Coleman who represents people that other people call Nazis.
Right.
Nazis. They're calling me Nazis,
right.
Okay? Here I am, an Orthodox Jew, and people are accusing me of representing Nazis. They're not Nazis. I'm suing people for calling them Nazis, in fact. But that's too many steps for the corporate mind. The corporate mind is avoid the public eye, and just be known generically. To some extent, that makes a great deal of sense, and for the reason that I just said. On the other hand, there are corporate law firms that understand and recognize you're not ever going to be on certain speed dials. You can take a position. You can, and in fact, many companies and many law firms, even in the business sphere, predominantly represent defendants, predominantly represent property owners, say, as opposed to people opposing zoning variances or that sort of thing.
Right.
So there are corporate identities or positional identities that law firms take on. But I had to do what I had to do in order to make a living. I didn't come into the world with a great business network. I'm twice removed. Again, I come from humble origins. So I didn't have people who were going to give me business from my family or from my social circle, my parents' social circle, or even my social circle. Princeton was nice, but what Ivy League schools do is reinforce existing networks more than give you access to those networks if you're not already in them, unless you want to really de-self yourself, and that goes back to the problem again. So I traded on personality, and I can't say I never made mistakes, but it has kept me above water.
You're now at 260,000?
It's something more like 200. I'm pushing to 280. I'm on my way to 280. Yeah.
Wow. What advice would you give on, this is on X, Twitter, formerly Twitter. Would you, for marketing wise, if someone opens a business, would you recommend getting active on Twitter? Yes, no. And if yes, how do you prevent it going down the rabbit hole of just doom scrolling?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on the business. It does have as you're calling it doom scrolling. it's a time suck. And if you're inclined toward controversy, and for example, look, the defense of Israel and the Jewish people has become a major issue for all Jewish people over the last 2-3 years. And I came to realize that I'm very good at defending the Jewish people. So I do it a lot, and it uses up a lot of my time, and I'm putting off certain people, but those weren't people who were going to be either my real friends or my clients as a practical matter. So you could, I'm not afraid of taking a position. It really depends on the business. The value of X for professions, I think, is very, very limited. I don't think the vast majority of lawyers can't do what I do. I'm friends with many of those who do it, people who have really distinct personalities and are known as fighters for certain causes. My former partner, Harmeet Dillon, who's now the head of Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department, she's one who does. She has done it. She has 1 million followers. She's extremely successful, and she knows how to do it. My friend Mark Randazza, people who are in the first, it's very useful to be on X for people like Mark and Harmeet and me, because we're First Amendment lawyers, and X is a free speech platform. But if I'm a dentist, or if I'm a regular plugger of a lawyer, if I'm a recruiter, I don't know too many. I know some recruiters who are on X. I think LinkedIn, at the end of the day, is a better platform for most business people. X is really geared toward, I'll say this much, if you can develop a personal brand, as I have, and make it pay, that brand is well thought out and it's a brand that can convert, X is great. X is great in a way that LinkedIn isn't, because LinkedIn is a lot of noise, a great deal of noise, and everybody's selling. Everyone on LinkedIn is selling to each other, and you're getting 1 million, in-mails from people who want to be your accountant and want to be your SEO guy, and it's a lot of noise. And plus, it has become a little bit like Facebook. A lot of people put a lot of inspirational garbage and stuff. So it's not what it was and I was there when it first started. But if you can really develop a personal brand and make it pay, I think that X, I'll say this much, X delivers SEO. My name on the internet, and it's a common name. There are a number of lawyers named Ronald Coleman, but I own it. I own the Google search terms for Ron Coleman or Ronald Coleman, lawyer, because of what I've done on X. So that's my thinking on it.
How would somebody get good at it, building such a big following?
Learn and watch and learn. I'll tell you an excellent example. I mean, I have a natural affinity for it. My wife does not. It's the antithesis of everything she's about. She is a private person. She doesn't like shooting off her mouth. X is all about the fast take. She's a thorough person. She's a go and study in the library person. I'm a watch how brilliant I am. I'm going to come in and just ace the test person.
Do you ever think like, oh, I said this too quickly, like pull back?
I can't say never, but because I am also a lawyer, I think I have more caution than a lot of other quick take people, because I realize that facts, you really need to see all the facts before you take a position on something. And a lot of the things that people run with turn out to be bogus. But my wife has eventually decided she needed to have an account because she is a writer. She writes on legal topics for a blog called Legal Insurrection. And I was always promoting her articles, but she said, she agreed with me finally. She needed to be on herself and have her own personality. Very low key, but over the years, she has learned to be a little bit more of a Twitter person, to be a little like, here's how you use a reply, here's how you use a quote tweet as opposed to a reply, here's how you use a screenshot, here's how you use a link instead. So experience will get you there. But you do have to, it is for, let's put it this way. I think a lot of people have actually had some success by having social media specialists handle their X accounts for them. If you're regularly putting out content, X is a great way to publish it and get eyes on it. But the way X works now, the algorithm will punish you for outbound links, but the platform will act as a server for your video or your written work. So upload that video, and people can and do build followings.
Right. What I've noticed is that people who enjoy publicity, are not afraid of the stage, have a much easier time building a following on any social platform. You said your wife is more quiet, more reserved, more private. What are some tips for somebody like that if they want to use social media to do marketing for their business or build a personal brand?
So again,
it's much harder.
It is much harder, and that's why I think they should seriously consider using professionals. There, at least you can have someone posting for you two or three times a day, consistent brand building messages and content, as opposed to being Ron Coleman and posting hundreds of times a day, perhaps scores of times at least, because I'm involved in controversy. And now that involvement in controversy, besides getting me paid, it's because it's monetized, builds my following. Because, wow, look how this guy, remember, what people want a litigator to do is to be good at arguing,
right?
To be masterful with words,
right,
and to be able to marshal proofs. So I'm demonstrating my talent for what they're looking for when I do what I do on Twitter. That's not true for somebody selling water purification systems.
Right.
I don't know how well those businesses work. It's the personal branding that works on Twitter better than the corporate branding.
Wow. Have you ever been involved in something you didn't want to be involved in?
That's an interesting question. Yes, quite a few of the cases that I still have on my docket are
How do you
cases
handle that? You don't want to do it.
You made a promise to someone, and I tried not to break my promises if I possibly can avoid it.
Would you feel comfortable sharing an example of taking on a case ever?
Well, yeah. There are cases where the client turns out to have unrealistic expectations or will not settle. They have a stubborn belief that they're entitled to a certain kind of relief that the law won't support. And I'll say to them, look, we can get out of this. We can get a nuisance settlement, and you'll get $10,000, $15,000 and we'll be done with it. Because no, this is worth millions of dollars. There's no universe where your claim is worth multi-million dollars. Wow. It doesn't exist. I said, can you get me an accountant to show me where those numbers come from? And they never, ever can.
Right.
So that happens a lot. And I will tell you, it's probably my weakest. The weakest component of my professional identity is case selection. I think I've taken on far too many dogs, especially on contingency.
If they win?
No.
When you say contingency, what do you mean?
I get paid if I win, right? But they're dogs.
Right.
They're not going to win, and I have a hard time letting people.
What about someone who's willing to pay you nicely, but
as long as they
sketchy?
No. So as long as it's not unethical. I will tell you that in the political sphere especially, and also in the defamation and reputation areas, there are clients who understand that their chances of winning are slim, but there is a narrative that they can get out there by filing their lawsuit, which will be because of notoriety or some other factor which will get them attention and get their story out there. As long as it's not an unethical claim, and they'll pay me, sure, I'm up for that. I've done it many times.
Have you ever taken a case where you thought you might lose friends, or
Oh, sure.
might damage your reputation?
No, of course. All the
Like
cases
if
representing
criminals have lawyers,
right.
right?
Yes, but in this sphere, I represented Laura Loomer. I represented Gavin McInnes.
Who are these people?
These are people who are notorious right wingers. They're very different two kinds of people. But there are people who have unfriended people merely because their friends followed Ben Shapiro. Okay? That person is a Nazi. Ben Shapiro from Guy.
Right.
Okay? So I'm way past that. I can tell you, in fact, that most of my friends from college, like the vast majority of my friends from the trademark legal world, want nothing to do with me anymore. And no one, only rarely has anyone actually said anything to me. Now, these are not really my friends. These are like old college chums. As you know, I live in an Orthodox Jewish community. We're not so dependent on friends. We operate on a family basis. In our community, the positions that I take, you see, Orthodox Jews, as you know, are not scared away by accusations of anti-Semitism, because we know, in fact, that many of the people who are accused of being Nazis and fascists agree with us on everything, often including Israel.
Right.
But they're called Nazis and fascists because that's what liberals call people who they can't respond to on the issues, and because they're not Democrats. So in the Orthodox world, I have never had that problem. It's just in the greater world and in the business world, and in the legal world, that many people have considered me they've written me off.
You are very confident in who you are, and you're not afraid to lose followers. What advice would you give to somebody who's very...
Don't be like me.
No, but like, you've built a very strong brand, and you're not afraid to speak your mind, and many people are.
That is, look, to a large extent,
people want to make both sides happy or be politically correct and don't speak their mind.
It is largely inborn. Okay, I'm a firstborn, and personality, I think. But there are people. I mean, look, think of people who try cases in my work, who they want to be trial lawyers, and they're not charismatic. They don't have great personalities, but they can succeed at being trial lawyers. So what we often see is that people who don't have my kind of natural boldness make up for it with insane preparation. And the people who have the boldness and the preparation are the ones who rule the world.
Not even lawyers, though. I'm talking about political views. There are people who are, since October 7th, the war broke out, there were people who were like Orthodox people who are nervous to go on LinkedIn and show support for Israel and nervous about losing followers. Or any advice you would give to somebody that is looking for that boost of confidence and should not be worried about all these things? Or should people be more careful and more thought out, and if they're nervous, they should hold back and not lose those followers?
You've got to believe in God. And if you believe in God, you know that you'll never lose out by doing the right thing. That's not the same as saying, do what Ron Coleman would do. Doing the right thing means that you have to feel, life is too short to go through it knowing that you're being dishonest with yourself. I knew a young woman who was a professional comedian. Very funny. She was very funny.
Was very funny?
She's not. I don't think she's working as a comedian anymore. She's
okay.
alive. She's okay. She was unhappy though, because in the world of comedians, everyone is liberal.
Right.
So she wasn't just faking it. She convinced herself that she was liberal too, but it didn't take. She knew she was saying things she didn't believe. And she finally started saying what she believed, and these people absolutely blacklisted her. She became a non-person and really depressed because she was alone. Wow. She was really alone, and in the world of comics, no one wanted to hear from her. And it was very instructive to me to see how she struggled with having made the attempt to be something that she wasn't, and I think it really tore her up inside. Here's the thing, Tully. Many, many people, and probably almost no one who's watching this, certainly not this far in, many, many people, I said this at our event, are fine not having strong opinions. They have no trouble sleeping at night because things don't mostly matter to them. They just want to get by. And they don't want. And the world is made up of people like that. The majority of people are like that.
Right.
They don't need my advice because they're not going to have this conflict. They just want to. They're going to take the path of least resistance, and you can't criticize someone. Largely it's a matter of conscience. If you're a person though who has a strong beliefs and you're motivated to do the right thing, you're going to have trouble keeping it to yourself. That doesn't mean you have to mouth off. It doesn't mean you have to mouth off. And the funny thing is, my wife thinks I'm always mouthing off. And she has no idea how much I'm repressed. She has no idea how much I'm actually keeping to myself as the better part of valor. So, you got to be true to yourself and find the center, find the sweet spot. But don't try to be something you're not, either in terms of personality or in terms of, look, there's a lot to be said. I know a lot of people who in law school tell me that during their entire time in law school, they never expressed an opinion, or even they're sitting there and they're being barked at with Marxist politics from some professor, or all the classes joining it, and they're sitting there, their knuckles are getting white. I'm just not going to say anything. I just don't want the trouble. I can't do that.
Social warrior.
I can't do that, but many people who do that are able to retire well before the age that I'm going to, not that I'm really looking to retire, but the point is, it's a way of surviving.
Right.
So people come to terms with different things, because there are other people who can't go to sleep at night knowing that they don't have enough money in their checking account, or
right.
that their 401k is not where they thought it would be at this stage in their life. And unfortunately for some of the people who are depending on me, who would prefer that I would be more like that, right. doesn't bother me in the slightest.
Ron, thank you so much.
Well, what a pleasure.
This was a really great episode. For everyone watching, where can people find you if they want to? You got that angle right there, that camera. Where can people find you?
The best place to start is always x.com, at Ron Coleman, RonColeman. Or roncoleman.com. That's my website and my law firm website. You'll find your way through. I'm easy to find. If you ever do a search for Ron Coleman, I have a YouTube channel as well. If you ever do a search, you must put in Ron Coleman lawyer, or you will get a most surprising result. I'll let you find out yourself. It won't be me.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. We are really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Till next time.